Sugriva's Atlas. And what we are going to discuss is the world geography that was the way it is described in Valmiki Ramayana 14,000 years ago. That is the timing of Ramayana. Now, the word Sugriva's Atlas was coined by my very good friend Bala Sankuratri. He has written a book, My Name is Ravana, and this is from the perspective of Ravana, but of course, based on Valmiki Ramayana, and in addition to some of the interpretations of Ramayana in the Purana literature. Okay, so it is, he doesn't claim a copyright, but I wanted to acknowledge that it was him in our discussion. He coined the term Sugriva's Atlas. And so just happy to mention that. Now, quickly give you a background knowledge. Before we get into geography, what is the timeline that we are referring to? It's very important because every aspect of geology, geography, oceans, land masses, it's not same as what it is today. Okay, so now my goal is to take you all back 14,000 years in antiquity. That is the time of Ram Ravan Yuddha that happened in 12,209 BC. And a number of you are familiar with it, that I did this based on initially all astronomy observations of Valmiki Ramayana. They amounted to more than 500, close to 600. And when you solve it like a jigsaw puzzle, like solving a crossword puzzle, like a Rubik's Cube, it takes you to that specific year, 12,209 BCE, the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. Now, what we are going to talk today, the evidence that I will pull based on the appropriate descriptions of Valmiki Ramayana and the modern evidence. I'll pull it from archaeology, paleontology, oceanography, climatology, geology, genetics, geography, physical anthropology, astronomy, different ancient Indian and even non-Indian narratives, okay, to show what a wonderful corroboration exists between the Valmiki Ramayana descriptions of the world geography and what we know of that geography 14,000 years ago based on modern research. All right, quickly to take you to that 12,209 BC, the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha, and therefore also to the year of Rama's birth, Rama Janma. That comes to 12,240 BC. Now, I mentioned there are close to 600 astronomy observations, and they all point to this 13th millennium BCE, okay, specifically that 12,240 BCE as the year of Ram Janma. What you're seeing here is again a quick astronomy demo picture created by my good friend Amaresh. And look at the 4 cardinal points. Earth is at the center. That's how we are observing everything in the sky. Okay, sun's position is near Nakshatra Revati, and sun decides what Rutu it is. So it is the timing of Sharad Rutu. That's what we are also saying. And look at the position of the moon. It is near Punarvasu. Okay, that is the timing of Rama Janma. Now, quick 4 cardinal points. You cannot move them fast. Okay, it takes 1,000 years to see a slight change from one nakshatra to another. Notice where summer solstice is, notice where winter solstice is, very much at a pusha. Notice where vernal equinox is, and notice where Ashwini, the autumnal equinox is. Also notice the points of north celestial pole, where this point is, this pink dot here, and also the point of south celestial pole. And do notice the brightest star that ever were the pole stars. This is our Brahma Rashi, Abhijit or Vega in the northern hemisphere. And in the southern hemisphere, we have Canopus or Agastya. Now, why am I showing you this? Just to give you a glimpse of how powerful, how accurate, and how precise the astronomy descriptions in Valmiki Ramayana are. So, for example, if we look at the birth timing of Rama, it was during the Chaitra month, as everyone knows, Chaitra Shukla Navami, and the descriptions of that lunar month from the Ramayana time will not match how the Chaitra month comes in our times. But at that time, it was the just after the rainy season. Okay, this is the time of Rama's birth. So Varsha Rutu is gone, and now sun is in the Sharad Rutu. And what are the descriptions? Chaitram Sri Manayam Masa Punya Pushpita Kanana. Or what is happening? Iti Bruvanta Mudita Pratyanandana Nrupanrupam Vrishtimantam Mahamegam Nardantam Iva Barhina. Like the clouds are forming and the peacocks are dancing. Okay, that's a beautiful description of a Sharad Rutu just after the rainy season. In fact, part of a rainy season in some fashion in some parts of India. If you look at the next verse, so I'm just pulling just 6 references out of those close to 600 to show you even they take you right away to 13 millennium BC and nowhere else. And this is very important for you to understand the timing before you enjoy the geography of Ramayana times. There is another reference. This is again astronomy reference. Nivrutta Akasha Shayana Pushyanita Himaruna. The sun is setting near Nakshatra Pushya at the time of Hemanta Rutu, that is around winter solstice. That's where the Pushya Nakshatra is. So if this sun moves here at the time of winter solstice of Ramayana times, you would see sunset near Pushya Nakshatra. Okay, or you will see Bharata, the description of Bharata just before the rainy season begins, making his vrata. What kind of austerities he want to perform through the Chaturmas. Everyone knows Chaturmas, okay, that begins with the rainy season. And he's referring to the Ashadhim or Ashadasya, which is referring to the timing of Ashad. Now, some people think lunar month. No, in this case, it is referring to the position of summer solstice in Nakshatra Ashada. Just like, I don't know if this is common knowledge across India, but the part of India where I come from in Maharashtra, when that rainy season begins, or just before it begins, we will call it Mrugatsa Paus. Okay, the rain due to Mruga. And what we are referring to is because at that time, the sun is in the Mrugashirsha Nakshatra, which is our times. Okay, so it is that Ashada is referred in that sense. And when the southern Vanara party, and we are going to talk about that today, when they are going in the southern direction, Sugriva is telling them where to look for Lanka. And he's saying, you will come to the southwest corner of the land, which is India. And then from there, when you go to the Mahendra mountain, you will able to see Agastya. They are referring to the Agastya star. And it says as bright as the sun. Okay. So why only Agastya could be seen from the extreme southwestern tip of India? Because it was 14,000 years ago. Because right now we can see Agastya even from Delhi. But 14,000 years ago, you could only see it from the extreme southern tip. So that also tells us the specific timing. When Vanara party is searching for Sita in the southern direction, the southern party especially take a long time. It's not just 1 month. In fact, they take few months and they're still searching. And there is a lot of frustration. And Angada says, look, here it is the time of spring season, and that is also passing away. We left after Sharada season. The whole Hemanta Rutu is gone, Shishir Rutu is gone, and now even I see spring season, Vasanta Rutu, and that is even passing away. That's what he's saying there. Vayam Ashvayuje Masi Kala Sankhya Vyavastita Prastita Sopi Chatita Himatat Karyamuttaram. So that time, at the time of Ramayana, the Vasanta Rutu coincided with Ashwin Masa. Whereas in our times is exactly opposite. Because of the precession of equinoxes, we are halfway through that 26,000 year cycle. Okay. And one last one, Valmiki Ramayana text also beautifully describes the North Pole star. Brahma Rashir Vishuddhasya Shuddhasya Paramashya Archishmanta Prakashante Dhruvam Sarve Pradakshanam. The reason I spend time on this is it's very critical that you are not stuck why we are talking of 14,000 years ago. Otherwise, the whole rest of the geography beauty could be lost. Okay, all right. Quickly, my 3 books. This is how you will see in India through Subbu Publications. You can order them online. If you're outside India, these are the books that this is how you will see them on the cover page at Amazon to order those. All right, so with that, let's get into the Sugriva's Atlas. I'm going to quickly fast forward to the time when Sugriva and Rama are together. They have waited through the rainy season, and now Sugriva has invited all his Vanaras to come together. He has divided them into 4 groups, and now they are going in the 4 different directions. And Sugriva is giving them the driving directions, you can say. All right. So in the east direction, what we are going to look at today is how the journey that he describes is from India all the way to the Andes. Now he's describing that geography. In reality, it's not that the Vanaras are all the way going to Andes. They wouldn't able to do that in 1 month's time. If you look in the south direction, it's from India to Antarctica. Again, he is describing the geography all the way to Antarctica, including Antarctica. He's not asking them to go all the way to Antarctica. In fact, we will find that he specifically tells them not to go to Antarctica. Okay, something very beautiful. And in the west direction, India to Alps. In the north direction, India to Arctic. Today, we are only going to look at India to Andes, and in the south direction, India to Antarctica. All right. Now, so a quiz for you to look at. I will ask this question. We can do this in today's question answer session or also in the part 2 of Sugriva's Atlas. But when the first time Ram, Lakshman meet with Sugriv and Hanuman and Jambavan, this is what Sugriv, when Sugriv listens to Rama's story, this is what Sugriv tells Rama. And he's saying, oh, I'm very sorry to hear the story of you losing your wife. All right. And he says the second line, if you see, na jane nilayam tasya sarvatha papa rakshasa samarthyam vikramam va api dosh kule yasya vakulam. I don't know anything about this this bad guy, okay, Ravana, about his the strength, about his prowess, okay, or his kula, etc. Or he's also saying, I don't know where he lives, or what is his location. Just keep this as a mind, okay? The quiz at the end of presentation. Like, is Sugriv telling the truth, like a pure truth, or is this a part of a statecraft, okay? And therefore, I said the hint is a statecraft. So in this particular map, what you are seeing, the highlighted area, on both sides, is what Sugriv is going to describe in Valmiki Ramayana. So if at all anything that Sugriv does not discuss, it is this middle portion of the Antarctic. And hopefully, either during my presentation or during the question answer, we will be able to answer that, possibly why he is not talking much about this middle Atlantic portion. Again, it's so beautifully the picture fits with the geography and the geological and climatological conditions that existed 14,000 years ago. All right, so let's begin in the east direction. Sugriva created 4 parties. He assigned leaders for each party. In the east direction, the leader was Vinata, okay, the Vanara, great brave warrior Vinata. Let's quickly look at the genetics and archaeology evidence. I mean, that's what we're going to look through. I want to give you a quick genetic picture. The modern genetic research has decisively showed that there is a genetic signal, statistically significant, living from India, like say southern part of India, most of India, and also the Andaman Nicobar, because that's a very isolated group, and so it's very easy to identify and isolate specific genetic samples. So the Onge tribe, for example, and that genetic signal you can see through the entire Southeast Asia. Okay, and by Southeast Asia, the way people use the word for India misleadingly, that's not how I'm using it. By Southeast Asia, I'm referring to actually Thailand, Laos, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and that part of the Asia. So you can see those red dots and yellow dots. So there is that genetic trail going through all the way Australia, okay, and further all the way east. Now remember, Earth is round, all the way east to South America. Now, Australia, we already have evidence, the human beings being there with Indian genetic stock going back to 65,000 plus years. You will be surprised to know how far back it also goes to South America. I'm going to show you that. There is a lot of research that has taken place. This is peer-reviewed research. For some magical, some mysterious reason, it does not come into mainstream. Maybe because it's our fault also that we don't spend time to do tapasya and read this material. All right. So genetics data shows a common genetic trail right from India all the way to South America. Now, archaeology data shows human presence in South America as early as 33,000 BC in Chile, or as early as 50,000 BC in Panama. Okay, so that South America and connecting that to the North America, that's where right there Panama is. Okay. So in that context, when you look at Sugriva's Valmiki Ramayana, the timing 12,209 BC, instead of thinking, oh my God, what is there in 12,209 BC? Now you know what? You may be, I mean, any one of us individually may be ignorant. Actually, the world was nicely populated, all continents, and a lot of interesting things were going on. Okay, so this gives you a milepost, okay, to look at from our journey from India through all the way to South America to Peru and Chile. Okay, I'll just quickly move through that. So a lot of publications you will find in mainstream scientific publications, peer-reviewed publications, and that takes us the presence of human presence in South America going back to 50,000 plus years. Quickly, let's look at the oceanography evidence. Now, keep in mind, we are not looking at today's map. If you go back 14,000 plus years, this is how the Earth appeared. And again, this is approximation based on a lot of oceanography and geology research. What are some of the things? So the way the arrows are shown, that is the journey we are taking. What are some of the things we are seeing? The part of Asia was connected with North America, okay, through that bridge, a very solid bridge. Look at India itself, and what you will find is that the Bay of Cambay and all that area, no, that was all land, very flat land. Because, and then also look at Indonesia. There is a continuous landmass from India to Thailand to Laos to Indonesia and almost close to Australia. Okay, why is that? Because the ocean levels, we will not go into the reasoning, ocean levels were down in comparison to what they are today down to 120 meters or 140 meters. Remember, meters, okay? So if you want to imagine in feet, then you have to multiply approximately by 3 there, okay? All right, so that's the journey we are taking. And then here at the bottom is that Antarctica. Don't think Antarctica is that big, okay? That's the challenge when we do the maps, right? All right, so now we get into the Ramayana descriptions. It says Samudram Avagadancha Parvatan Pattananicha. This is the description going in the east direction. And Sugriva is telling Vinata and his team the different types of human beings that you're going to encounter. This is anthropology research, okay? See, look for Sita everywhere. He says, Karna, what kind of people you will see? Karna Pravarana Chaiva Tathacha Api Oshta Karnakaha. Okay, some people's are ears, they are covered, they are very long. Same thing with their lips, they can actually come down, all the way. Their faces are very different. Ghora Loha Mukha Chaiva Javanacha Ekapadaka, one-footed people apparently, okay, and so on. And then it goes on and on, like people who are eating raw fish, that should remind you of a sushi, okay? That Ama Meena Ashana, for example, there, okay? Look through all the islands. And now, what kind of evidence we have? All right, let's look at what we see today. So don't be surprised if that was there even that long ago. But today, just from a, sorry, my spelling mistake there, from an anthropology perspective, looking at just these verses, all right? If you go to Laos, you will see this is Podang woman, they will extend their necks, and they keep on putting those rolls. They consider a sign of beauty. Not very appealing or a right thing to do from a physical structure point of view, but we do our tattoo and piercing in spite of the pain, so why not? If you like it, some people will do it. Look at these lips coming long. Now, these are our decorations. They're not actual lips. And you will see, I'll show you the actual lips modifications too. So if somebody sees a person like this and they think therefore they have long faces, long lips, it's possible, right? Based on the description that Sugriva is explaining. Or this is a Dayak, Indonesian Dayak woman, where look at the ears, what she has done, okay? And if you go all the way to South America, this is a person from Zoe tribe. They actually take a very specific wood, they make a piece like this, then they cut a hole in their mouth, and from the inside the mouth, they pull that piece down here, okay? The shape is such that it stays there. And it's a sign of decoration, and everyone in their tribe would do it. So these are the different types of people in a way. Now I'm showing you pictures from our times, but that's what Sugriva is describing. Or people will add appendages, like to the ears. And that actually is a secret of the tail and the Vanara face of the whole Vanara army, the Sugriva's army and whatnot, okay? Almost think of it as a uniform. But just quickly, I'm showing you a few other faces, from this southeast area, like all the way Papua New Guinea, from Thailand to Papua New Guinea. Now, quickly taking you to Africa, look what they do with their lips. Okay, they will actually pull it, extend it, and even put some objects in between. And that's how you are seeing those lips. Or look what they will do. They will cut the lip and turn it into the way it looks like a ear. Also notice what they have done to their ears as well. And if you think this was only happening outside India, if you watch this Super Machi movie, this was also brought to my attention by my friend Bala Sankuratri. And he said that you can see this lady is famous apparently if you're watching Telugu movies, and you can see what she has done with her ears. All right, let's move to some other aspects. Okay, now he is talking of different islands. He says Yatnavantam Yavadvipam, that's important. Sapta Raja Upashobhitam, 7 different kingdoms, 7 islands, something he's talking. Suvarna Rupyakam Dvipam, look how the names are given based on what is found there. So gold is found in certain place, it was called Suvarna Dvip, Ropya Dvip, silver, gold, right? Yavadvip, where the oats are grown, the Yava is grown, right? Different mountains and so on. Now, do we have evidence of that? Well, if we go look for evidence in our times, as far as back as we can see, so this is the area where wherever you see the star, that's where these mines are. Okay, this is now going back 2,000 years ago, not 14,000 years ago, but that is also telling you that there were mines long time before that. In fact, the gold in India was known from its source of origin. See, India was supplying lots of stuff and in return getting gold. Okay, and depending on the source of gold, they would call it Jambu Nada gold or Suvarna Dvipa gold. That's how the name would be given. And actually, there are references in the Vedas which refers to the gold as Parujam, referring to many people would simply not believe it unless they know the origin of these words of old places. The word is called, for the gold, is called Parujam, referring to the gold found in Peru, which is where we are going. So I mention it. All right. So quickly, I'm showing you the 7 Dvipa. That's what it refers to. That's not to confuse with exactly the names today, because that's a recent history. But something very interesting that Indonesia has preserved, okay, which in India, we have almost like hesitation in saying it. The Jayaraya Dvipa, these are their emblems for each of the individual provinces of Indonesia. Look at the Kalimantan. Kalimantan, you know exactly what that means. Okay, and Uttara, north part of Kalimantan. Or that next one, it says Bali Dvipa Jaya. Okay, or if you look at on the emblem of the Java, you will there hear Shakti Bhakti Praja. Or if you read the emblem of Papa, the Papa, Papa part of Indonesia, not Papua New Guinea, you will see on the emblem Karya Swadhyaya. And if you look at the Indonesian emblem, it says Bhinneka Tungala Ika. Okay, Tungala you may not know, but Bhinneka and Ika you know. Okay, unity in diversity. Okay, so all Sanskrit here, guys. Okay, all right. Mountains are described, lakes are described, volcanoes are described in Valmiki Ramayana, and we can see evidence of all of that. Okay, let's cross the Pacific Ocean. Okay, so now we are going through the whole Polynesia and going towards South America. Okay, crossing the Kshirosagar, because there is not much there, small island, so we don't have much evidence left. My good friend and my adopted mom, and I'm her adopted son, Ushi Ringlip, she's a Canadian a German Canadian researcher, lives in Toronto area. She has done research. She has spent her time traveling around the world, 70 plus now somewhere, uh, including India. She has lived in India. Uh, Her preliminary research is into making a connection of different Polynesian languages with Sanskrit. It's preliminary, but it is something worth looking at. And when I bring it to the attention of many of our academics, they say, "Oh, I'm not convinced." And I don't want them to be convinced. I want them to even comprehend what she has done before agreeing or disagreeing and explaining why they disagree. Anyways, so she has shown this. Now, something interesting you will see through the entire Polynesia. I mean, this is like just east of Indonesia all the way to Hawaii. You will Samoa, for example. Some of you, I mean, you can go to YouTube afterwards and just type Siva, Siva, like Shiva, but Siva, and you are going to see all these Polynesian hula dances, right? The Siva, and some islands in the Polynesia where the S turns into H, and that has happened. So you'll see their dance as a Hiva, Hiva, okay? But it is referring to the Siva. Now, do you know what Siva means in, for example, Samoan language? It means a dancer. Now, think of a Nataraj, and the things, you may be able to connect the dots, and the things may come together. All right. Now we are going to go to South America. Okay, paleontology, archaeology, and astronomy. Quickly, we will look at this. This is a brilliant evidence, beautiful evidence. Now, here Sugriv describes, as you cross the Kshirosagar, the Pacific Ocean, you are going to find these frightening Rakshasas called Mandeha of different forms, okay, Nana Rupa. And I'm just wondering, does he refer to species? And I'll explain why. They are fearsome, hanging down from the mountain peaks. If you have some knowledge of the animal kingdom, as soon as you hear hanging down from the mountain peaks, something should come to your mind. He is referring to actually bats, okay? And in the current context of corona, we know, for example, like the bacterias. But if you go to our ancient Indian narratives, you'll see the bacteria is referred to as a rakshasa also. Okay, in a Shatapat Brahman, there is a description where he says, before you sit for meditation or yajna, okay, take your deer skin, where you sit, and clean it up a few times so that all the rakshasas go away. Okay, you see the description like that. And what he's saying is the typical description for the bats. Okay, during the time they are hanging up from those cliffs and they go and catch their prey. But bats are around the world. So what's the big deal about this specific species? Think it this way. Most of the world bats, in fact, all around the world, with the exception of South America, they are frugivorous. Mostly they live off of like insects. I mean, they will eat insects, but fruits and seeds and whatnot. Whereas only in South America, you find the vampire bats. Okay, they will go for the blood sucking with the animals and whatnot. That's how it looks like. And the reason I mentioned different species, because now people know from modern research, there were multiple species, possibly 3 or more, and now, or many more, and now maybe up to only 3 have survived. Okay, so that's how this Mandeha Rakshasa is. If you look at the skeleton, you can see how powerful the jaw is, that they can bite into animal skin and suck the blood. And actually a picture of that bat sucking from the pig. All right, now somebody will say, okay, is that all evidence is? No. There is a wonderful archaeology evidence that I'm going to show you. Many people would have seen this, many people would be aware of it. This is mentioned in our works by Chaman Lal, long time ago. Then Dr. P.V. Vartak, also again long time ago. And these descriptions are there, but we again have to take the effort to even read the old books to see what is being given here. Now, what is beautiful, when Spaniards came to Peru, and when they asked these folks, local people there, okay, did you build this or what is it? They said, oh, we don't know what it is. And no, we did not build it. Did your ancestors build it, like your forefathers? He says, no, even forefathers also told us that somebody else built it. So nobody knows when it was built. And naturally, they don't know what exactly it is, why it was built, when it was built, and what was the purpose. Guess what? Valmiki Ramayana tells you answers to all of these questions. Okay, it is known in modern times as candelabra of Andes. If you go to Peru, this is one of the things to see. quickly, it's a 600 to 800 feet tall, 2 to 3 feet deep. So what you see there, essentially the dirt and stones are removed like 1 meter deep, say, and that's how this structure is engraved on these colorful rocks. Can be seen from 12 miles, in the sea. You can see this structure. And Sugriva is saying, now finally you will come to this land, and that is what you're going to see. He says, Trishira Kanchanas Ketus Talastasya Mahatmana Stapita Parvatasagre Virajati Savedika. Okay, quick crude translation. So Trishira, like a trident, right? A three-headed golden flag, okay, shining Kanchana, golden. Do you see that as a golden? Yes. Okay, Pratyaksha Praman, three-headed, shining on the top of the mountain with, look at the last word, Sa Virajati, shining there. Sa Vedika, Vedi at the base. I don't know if everyone can see this, but there is a rectangle, just like when we do the Veda Bhumi for doing a yajna at the base. Okay. Now, that's not it. Now he goes on explaining who created it, when it was possibly created, and what was the purpose. Purvasya Dishi Nirmanam Krutam Tat Tridasheshware Tatah Param Hemamaya Sriman Udaya Parvataha. Okay, Purvasya Dishi Nirmanam. It was done to mark the east direction, the end of his direction, the beginning of east direction. Okay, by who? Tridasheshware. You can take whatever meaning you like. By Indra. Indra is also the deity of east direction. Tatah para hemamaya Srimana Udaya Parvata. And if you go beyond that, then you're going to find the Udaya Parvata, referring to the Andes. Okay. Now, when it was created, well, some people take the interpretation of that word Krutam, instead of saying as a done, created, as a referring to Kruta Yuga. It could be possible. It may not be the case, but that's what it is. The structure was created by Indra to mark the eastern direction. Now think of it. If you think of timing of Ramayana as a Treta Yuga, and sometime before that, even if you interpret that as a Kruta Yuga, that makes total sense too. All right, let's move on. Now we are going to go in the south direction. So I described in the east direction the journey from India, starting in the central India. I didn't spend much time on it, but from there to Thailand, Indonesia, then Polynesia area, and all the way to South America. Okay, let's look at the southern direction. This is the most crucial direction because Ravana has taken Sita in the southern direction, that Jatayu has seen, that these Vanara also have seen when she dropped her jewelry, right? And I showed you in that picture. That's what they are showing it to Rama. And that's how the recognition is also made. So this is very important direction, and Sugriva assigns many leaders, okay, and very important leaders. Angad, Wali's son, Jambavan, who is also very amazing cartographer there, and Hanuman, extremely powerful, extremely intelligent person, okay. So we are going now in the south direction. All right, if you look at the whole world map, so the area approximately directionally where we are going is highlighted here. Now, what we are going to find, we are going to see descriptions of Sugriva from central India all the way to Antarctica. Okay. Now, there are some descriptions that we will not able to exactly point out which specific land is referred to. Based on the description, we may able to speculate that it appears to be some parts of Africa. It could be referring to many islands that might have been there. Remember, 14,000 years ago, the sea levels are down to 120 to 140 meters in comparison to today. Could be parts of Australia, and actually we have evidence that some parts of South America is even referred to in this direction. Okay. All right. Of course, the Lanka, but I'm not going to talk about Lanka today for a deliberate reason. In fact, the part of this 6 talk series, I'm going to do one part on where Ravana's Lanka is. Okay. All right. So let's begin with Sugriva's description. He starts from central India. So if you see the description, he starts with Narmada. Okay. He talks of Narmada, then Godavari, Krishna, Veni, then he comes Venya, okay, Bhima. Then he comes down to Kaveri. Okay. I want to quickly take you down to the most important part, all the way to the end of it. And here he's referring to the southwest portion, the Agastya Malay area. Now we call it Agastya Malay biosphere. He's calling there Mahendra Parvata, okay, Malaya Parvata. Tasya asinam nagasya agre malayasya mahojasam Drakshata Aditya Sankasham Agastyam Rushi Sattamam. I mentioned when you go to the tip, he says Malaya Parvata, okay, then only you will able to see Agastya. That Agastya who is as bright as Aditya, as bright as the sun, okay, that Canopus, the Agastya star. Tatah Tena, and where is this location? He's giving there. Tamraparnim Grahajustam Tarishchata Mahanadim. He says this is the area of a Tamraparni. Now it's not always easy to show. If you can see it, great. If not, where this arrow ends, that is where this river Tamraparni, okay, and then it goes into the ocean. Now, so this is the area I'm going to talk about. Now, something else. What is he saying? When you go there, okay, tat samudram atatah samudram asadya sampradharya artha nishayam agastena antare tatra sagare viniveshita. There you will able to see the Agastya deep into the ocean. And then what it says, Chitrasanu Nagasriman Mahendra Parvatottamam Jata Rupamaya Sriman Avagado Maharnavam. As if Agastya has 1 feet on that mountain, and the other feet is in the ocean. Now, this is the slide I borrowed from my wonderful co-researcher, Mrs. Rupa Bhattiji. Okay, because she's working on the whole Agastya Code 3-volume work. Okay, the quick points I want to mention is where this line is drawn, the horizontal red line is drawn. Only south of that, in 14,000 years ago, Ramayana times, you could see Agastya. Anywhere north of that, you could not see Agastya. And why? Because Agastya has become the pole star. Okay, and that is a wonderful evidence that brings it all together. Then he describes the area of that Mahendra Parvat. I'll skip through that. Okay. Again, very important, I just mentioned it. The area shown, that southern tip, is from where you could only see Agastya, star Agastya, in the Ramayana times. This is very, very critical. Okay, so this is like her independent work, and that brought to this 12,209, the 13 millennium BCE. All right, again, from Valmiki Ramayana, she's working on Agastya. She was not working on the Valmiki Ramayana dating per se. Okay, but this is a wonderful corroborative evidence. All right, quickly, if you remove the water from this southern part of the India, this is how it looks like. I don't want to spend time on the Lanka. I mean, I'm already over time there. But so we will do a separate session. But what is important is if the water is removed, what you will see is that Sri Lanka, you know, the area, the gap between Sri Lanka and India, it's not very deep. Okay, and if you go back 14,000 years ago, the land masses were connected, so there is no question of a bridge, no question of any of that. But we'll discuss that some other time. Now here, he's describing. Now this is the contrast, guys. Okay, so now he's telling Vanara exactly where Lanka is. Dvipatasya apare pare shata yojana visruta. Okay, now after this point, you have to go 100 yojanas. Okay, agamya manushay dviptam tamah margadhamam satat. He is now describing how this island or how this Lanka looks like. Tatra sarva atmana sita margitavya visheshata sahi deshatu vadhyasya ravanasya duratmana. This is land of Ravana. Specifically, you should look for Sita in this area. Okay, so but remember what he said before. He said, I don't know who this Ravana is, what is his strength, where he lives, right? The very first time they meet. But when he's giving the instructions, he's giving that. Okay, just some food for thought for you guys. Okay, so now they have to go somewhere in that south direction to go look for Lanka. We will not discuss that now. I want to quickly take you to Antarctica. In between, he describes a few islands and whatnot. I'll skip that portion. Now he says, as you keep on going, where are you going to come? Ante, at the end of the earth, he's saying. Think of the Gods Must Be Crazy movie, end of the earth. Ante Prithivya, but Sugriv knows the earth is round, okay? Ante Prithivya Durdharsha Tatah Swarga Jitastita Tatah Param Nava Nava Sevya Pitru Loka Sudaruna. This is the land of Pitrus. The south direction is called the land of Pitrus. The north direction is called the land of Devas, and so on. So he says it is a very tough landscape to approach, tough landscape to travel to, the land of Pitrus. And what is that land called in the Ramayana? Rajadhani Yamasya. Okay, it's a capital of Yama. Esha Kashtena Tamasavruta, and it's usually covered with a complete darkness. Okay, Eta Vat eva yushmavi vira vanara pungava. Hey, just know this information. And shakyam vichetum gantum va na ato gati matam gati. Don't go there. It is not very easy to go there, and if you go there, it's not very easy to come back. Okay, don't go there. He's describing Antarctica. This is the land. Quickly, I'll show you where to look for India. So this is, if you look at the north, straight north here, this is the prime meridian that the colonial, during the colonial period, they took it from Ujjain. The British did not just steal the wealth, they also took the prime meridian, okay, from Ujjain. That is 1851. They took from Ujjain to Greenwich. Okay, so that Greenwich line coming from the top here. If you go right direction, okay, that's the Indian Ocean. And so look at 75 here, 75 longitude. That's approximately India. So coming from there, if you go in this direction, that's where you go towards India. And this is where, just as it so happens, this is where the India's camp is on the Antarctica, India's research station, okay, right in this area, along with French research station and so on. And this area, this tail here is very important. That goes towards South America, towards the Patagonia area, okay. And something very important, because I'm going to show you in a minute. This right now there is ocean, but 14,000 years ago, again because of the ocean levels, the land was connected. Just keep that in mind, okay? Keep that in mind. All right, so he's saying, he's describing until Antarctica, but he's not asking them to actually go to Antarctica. Just keep that in mind, okay? Again, this is the map. This is where that Indian station is, that this pink line here. But I will quickly move on. Something interesting. So Sugriva, the India knew most of the globe. We looked at two directions. So India knew all the way to South America, and in the southern direction all the way to Antarctica. Sugriva's time, Ramayana time. But if you look at the modern history, the textbooks, which are based on, from a very Eurocentric point of view, they will say, actually they do say, they say that Antarctica was discovered, 18th century, 1773, 1783, 1818, depending on which narration you believe in. All right. But there were actually maps, okay, that were found with Italian navigators, admirals, or even Turkish admirals like Piri Reis, and I'll show you. In those old maps, some of the maps, actually it shows Antarctica, and interestingly with rivers. If you see these lines along the coast, these are river lines, by the way. Okay, so if we get into question answer, I may come and answer that. But just imagine, rivers were shown. Right now it's all ice, covered with ice. Okay, no chance of a rivers, at least not the visible rivers. Now modern research, the sonar technology and whatnot, has shown that actually there were rivers on Antarctica. And if you want to go geologically, go backwards, that you find, and I'm going to do separate session on it. If you go backwards, you find actually there were times when Antarctica was free from ice. Okay, and then actually there were these rivers. Okay, but you can find these in some of the old European maps also. But where did they get these maps? Okay, now we know that definitely India knew it, but you can also see some threads. This, what I'm showing you here, and I'm almost done. What I'm showing you here, this is called Piri Reis map. Okay, it's drawn on a deer skin. And just for the orientation, I'm telling you, think of, we are tilting the earth. What you are seeing, this area where you see these ships, okay, they are in the ocean. And think of this as a part of Atlantic. And what you are seeing here, say if you look at this protrusion, think of this protrusion that comes out for Brazil in our times. Okay, but instead of showing eastward, this is shown like going up, because the map is tilted like this. And so if you go, and there are these notes here, okay, notes are in Arabic and whatnot, Turkish language, and you go further south, and it's not very easy to see here. Actually, this map, this is from the 16th century map, but it shows South America connected to Antarctica. Okay, and you can read this whole book by Charles Hapgood. So I'll leave you with that. But this admiral, Turkish admiral, this is during the Ottoman Empire. He's saying, how did he created this map? He says from 8 Jaffariyas, what I don't know what exactly, I'll just say some map sources. somebody who exactly knows what that word means may have a better information. But some input sources, plus one Arabic map of Hind, don't forget that, okay, plus Hind, India, Hindu, Indu, newly drawn Portuguese maps, plus maps of Sindh, Hind, and Chin, geometrically drawn, plus map of Columbus, because this is 16th century, so Columbus has already gone to America and whatnot. He says, this Piri Reis says, Turkish admiral, I have extracted and built the accurate and reliable map for the seven seas. Now, why is this important? If you look at even the book of Sir Oliver, 1893, and he's showing the well-known scientist admired in UK. I mean, should be admired everywhere for some of the good stuff he has done. And it is not about him, by the way, but even where he shows the geographical map, I mean, the whole Earth, the area of that Antarctica is left blank, because this is I'm talking 1893. So yes, people have gone, even the Europeans have finally gone to Antarctica, but everyone has not found the agreement that it is a truly landmass, because it was all ice that time, right? So that is one of their confusion or hesitation. All right. So in comparison to that, now look at the 16th century map or 15th century Italian maps, or Sugriva's atlas going back 14,000 years ago. This is the extreme right is this Piri Reis, supposedly, that is his statue. This is Captain Cook, who made many trips to the southern part of the ocean. And again, this is modern Antarctica, where it does not show connecting to South America, but the Piri Reis map does show. Okay. Now, what does that tell you? Piri Reis map is only 16 from 500 years ago. And even at that time, Antarctica was already separated, which means the source information that Piri Reis used is very ancient. And that's why the map is shown as if South America is completely connected to Antarctica. Okay, with that, that was my last slide.
Kishkinda is in the Tungabhadra region, then why is Sugriva referring to rivers like Ganga, Yamuna, Koshi, and territories of Malwa, Videha, and Assam in the east? This should be the north, right? In the starting of this chapter, or the Sarga of the Valmiki Ramayana, he's referring to these. Why? This is in the east direction. Yeah.
Yes, I got the question. Okay, so the question is, if Sugriva is describing either southern direction or eastern direction, why is he describing lots of areas of India? That you will find in all four directions. Okay, just as a reference point, he's always starting kind of from the central India. Okay, so he in this southern direction, he starts from Narmada, and he goes Narmada, Godavari, okay, Krishna, Venya, Kaveri. So from the central India, he's going in the southern direction. When he talks of the eastern direction, he also talks of like the land of Orissa, and maybe even a Wangadesh, meaning Bengal, and so on. So that's for a reference purpose. Again, remember, I mean, this is he just giving us a direction. Somewhere, if you want to go from Delhi to Agra, okay, somebody will say, okay, once you got out of Delhi, then take that highway. That is one way of telling it. But the other way is from wherever you are beginning as a reference point. So somebody giving me direction, he says, okay, let's begin with Connaught Place. So just as a reference point, he's saying that. And he will do that for all four directions in that fashion.
My simple question is, would you mind shedding some light on how did Sugriv, accumulate all this knowledge about the world geography?
Yeah, great question. And so I will give a brief answer here. And again, the answer is brief even when I finally give it in another place. What question that you ask, and that's a great question to ask, because Ram asked the exactly same question to Sugriv. He says, okay, you are telling me for all these four directions, how did you figure this out? Okay. And Sugriv goes back to the story of Sugriv and Wali. He says, and I'm not going to that story. Everyone knows that story. Or if, please go back to Valmiki Ramayana and read that story. But when Wali removed Sugriva from his kingdom, okay, and now Sugriva was a bit worried, and he says, okay, so because he was no longer in the ruling, and he had time, and also he was worried about Wali, he went in all different directions. And Sugriv actually claims he made rounds around the earth, like exploring the globe multiple times. That's what Sugriv claims. And so he says, I went in this direction, and sometime, I saw this, and he gives a very specific direction, like how far he went. Then he went in the southern direction, then he went in the western direction, and then he went in the northern direction. So that is the answer. He says, when Wali removed me, and so I was fearful of him, and also because I had a time, I went all around the world multiple times, and that's why I know these places.
Sneham Joshi asks, does Sugriv describe about the nature of Antarctica, snow-clad and inhabitable, Yama's land? So probably not. And there's another one, a similar question. Manish Kaul says, does that mean that someone actually traveled to South America or Antarctica?
Okay, so two questions. First thing, how does Sugriv describes the Antarctica or Yamapuri? Okay, Sugriv describes, so he's saying it's the capital of Yama. Okay, now people would hardly believe, okay, who is going to live in such a cold place? But think of it, not in Antarctica, but there are extreme cold places in the northern hemisphere, and actually people are living. I mean, Alaska is one, Northwest Territories of Canada, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and places like that. So he's describing what I just described, which is to say, he says it's the capital of Yama. It's an extremely dangerous place, Durdharsha. Okay, it's very hard to live there. It's very hard to approach. It's very difficult to come out of it. Okay, and if you don't go there, if you go there, it's hard to go there, but it's also very hard to return. So he's saying the conditions are treacherous. Okay, that's the description of his time. So that's what we know. And what is the second one? So did actually people go to South America? Well, if people are listening carefully, I showed at the beginning that there is a human presence. There is a evidence of human presence. South America, these peer-reviewed papers are taking us to 33,000 BC, like Monteverde in Chile, for example. And the paper from Panama, I don't know how old it is. It's not that old, last 5-6 years. Taking it to 50,000 BC. Amazon, there is so much to be explored. So just to answer the question, yes, people actually indeed went there. And I removed, just to keep in time, I removed some of the wonderful descriptions from southern direction, but I'll quickly mention it because somebody asked that question. A place called Bhogavati, okay, where Nivanta Kavach were ruling, is described in Valmiki Ramayana multiple times. Sugriv mentions it. And then if you go to Uttarakhand, the Ravana's exploits, let's say Ravana going around the world and conquering the world, he also goes to Bhogavati, Nivanta Kavach. And if you see the direction and everything, it is South America. In fact, Ravan did not succeed in winning over Nivanta Kavach. So he makes a agreement, taking their help to conquer rest of the world. Okay. So yes, people were actually going. I mean, Sugriva says, if you have to take his verbal claim, that he has gone there. Ravana has gone. That's what Valmiki Ramayana says. And if you read Puranas, or if you go further back, even before Ramayana times, Mahabali, that is the one we are talking. And he established these different Patala areas, Sutala, Vitala, Talatala, Rasatala, Atala. These are different colonies in South America. And there is a sufficient evidence to claim that is what it is being referred to. So yes, people went there.
Varun Kulkarni asks, within the ways of traveling available at the time, how was it possible to travel such distances, specifically when they say around the world so many times?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I don't know what I think his name was Varun, right? Varun had in mind. But before the aeroplanes, I mean, if he's stuck in aeroplanes right now, before the aeroplanes, with the boats, people were traveling around the world. With the boats, people were traveling. And now if somebody's saying, oh, come on, but where were the modern boats? Again, I would say we refuse to do the Swadhyay and Tapasya. Before, like 100 years ago or 150 years ago, let's say before World War I, World War II, the most sophisticated place to build boats, most sophisticated boats, big boats, long boats. Of course, we see the descriptions of them as a Shabda Praman in Rigveda and Mahabharata and Ramayana and whatnot. But even a physical evidence accepted by the modern academia, we can say, is the best place, most sophisticated place where they had the skill was in India. Okay, was in India. In fact, now I don't have the details, but the Treaty of Nanking, which was done between the Bombay boat builders, the Western Coast boat builders, done by British, okay, was because British needed these sophisticated boats. So it was a sophisticated. Now I don't know what exactly the other challenge that the person who asked the question is. I mean, that time people could go. I mean, take right now, look at the timing, how long the boat takes. And if you don't have to go too far back, if you go like 300 years ago or 200, yeah, like say Ben Franklin's time, between America and England, it wasn't an easy journey, but they were doing it. They were doing it multiple times. Same thing with India. People going from India to England, how were they going? They were going by boats.
Yeah, very interesting talk, but I just want to ask one thing. You see, when you say that Sugriv might have gone to Antarctica, if you see Antarctica is very, very far, and there is just ocean in between, and Sri Lanka is so near, still they could not go to Sri Lanka. They had to, Nal and Neel had to make a bridge. Otherwise, they could not travel on the sea. So how is it possible that he went to Antarctica?
I said 14,000 years ago, Sri Lanka was connected as a landmass with India. So there is no question of a bridge. He's saying, he didn't say, he's not saying he sat in the meditation and found it. He's saying he physically went there. Unless I have evidence contrary to that, that's the narrative I'm going with.
To answer the riddle in the quiz in the beginning, definitely Sugriva was doing some political tactics here, because even after this, he had to take care of Vali in some way, shape or form. And even after this, he tests Bhagwan Ram by asking him to break those trees. So definitely there was some statecraft going on there. My question is, and there have been some incredible questions that have been asked, so I kind of feel very bad. My question is, in the Ramayana, I was reading Vivek Debroyji's translation of the Ramayana, and even during this Sugriva's Atlas part, the word Bharatavarsha has never been used anywhere. But whereas if we see in Sanjaya's Atlas later on in Mahabharata, the word Bharatavarsha pops everywhere. So what is the deal here? Is the story that Bharat, the son of Shakuntala, did he not conquer India at this point, or what's the relative chronology here? That's my question.
Okay, great question. I mean, I'll start with Sir Karl Popper, one of my inspiration. He says, while we differ little bit based on what little bit stuff that we know, when it comes to ultimate ignorance, we are all equal. Okay, so it's not like I know a lot more than you. So I'll start with the answer that I truly don't know the answer. In fact, we assume that it is the Harishchandra Bharat, and from that name the Bharat came. But keep in mind, we have many Bharat, right? There is a Rama's brother also is a Bharat, and there are many other Bharat kings. Okay, when sometime Vinoba was asked, like, so which Rama, when people used to ask Gandhi, which Rama, when you say Rama, hey Ram, Jai Ram, which Ram you are referring to? And Gandhi jokingly used to say Antaryami. When the same question was asked to Vinoba says, it is, I'm referring to that Ram after which Dashratha named his son Ram. So the reason I'm just mentioning that is because which Bharata we don't know. We make an assumption it is that Harishchandra Bharat, right? So that possibly answers the question. Now, what my co-researcher, I mean, she's doing a wonderful research, Rupa Bhattiji, what she has done, and this relates to that answer. I mean, if you go to Rigveda, you will not see the word Kurukshetra. Okay, and then afterwards, somewhere it was a Samanta Panchak before it became Kurukshetra. Okay, so Parshurama's time it was a Samanta Panchak. Okay, so the names keep on changing, but the places are the same. Now, why the name India? People make this whole Hindu Sindhu business. That could be true. I don't want to get into that. But India has a Hindu, Hindu in the sense of a moon. That reference is there. So we will get that. Something else. There is a river Bharati, just like river Saraswati. River Bharati mentioned in the oldest parts of Rigveda. Okay, Ira, Bharati. I mean, if you look at work of Srikant Talagiriji or any Rigvedic work, you will see that. So the names keeps on changing. Now it's a New Delhi. Indraprastha was there before. Before that, it was what was that Aranya, right? Whatever the forest, Khandava one. So names keeps on changing.
Yes, and one was that there's a mention of Mandara mountain. So is that the same as Samudra Manthan?
Thank you. No, that's thank you for reminding me. That's a great question. Look what happens, like Arshakavya. Okay, so Ramayana is Arshakavya, and that will also apply to Puranas. But Ramayana is Arshakavya. Okay, Itihas. Mahabharata is the Itihas. And what is the Itihas? Itihas has got a lot of stuff. Okay, I mean, what is the objective? Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam, right? Upadesham Samanvitam, Purva Vruttam Katha Yuktam Purva Yuktam Katha Yuktam Itihasam Prachakshate. So the Itihas is much more than history. Okay, it has history. It also has some mythological story. Now, these are like more for a Niti Vichar. But it also has allegorical stories. Many times astronomy, many times geology, many things are described in an allegorical model. So I'll come to that Mandara. So yes, there can be a specific mountain that is called Mandar, specific mountain that is called Meru. But depending on the context, sometimes Meru refers to North Pole. And sometimes Mandar, Manda, think of a word Manda, slow. The Meru is, say here, ecliptic North Pole, you can say. And Manda, Meru Mandara Dhakute, like so Meru Mandar will come together. So the Manda motion is the motions of that NCP and SCP that I showed you, initially at the beginning, the circles I showed. So then what does that mean? That is the Mandar then is the area which is occupied by that circle of the precession at the North Pole or at the South Pole. Okay, and that's a very slow motion. That's where the word Manda comes. So we have to know what the context is. And actually, when we get to the second part, the Mandara mountain comes. Mandara mountain, Meru Mandar will come twice. Okay, twice. And they come in a different context. So we will do that in the second part.
Question by Manish Kaul. Are there any other mentions than Valmiki Ramayana that Indians travel to different parts of the world? And what about travels to European countries in Vedic times?
Okay. He is asking a question great question for my next talk, the part 2. That is when we are going to go. I just briefly mentioned that. Beginning with India, Sugriv is describing the geography all the way to Alps. Okay, Switzerland, all the way to Switzerland, guys. Okay. And going in the north direction, he described geography all the way to the Arctic Sea. And just like he gave a description in Antarctica and saying, hey, I'm describing you what it is, but don't go there. He says exactly the same thing in the northern direction. Okay, he describes all the way to Arctic Sea, Uttara Samudra. He calls it Uttara Samudra. By the way, Andes, he called it Udaya Parvata, if you paid attention in Andes. To Alps, he calls it Astagiri, where the sun sets. Okay, something very interesting. And Arctic Sea he calls Uttara Samudra. But again, he says, I'm describing it to you, but don't go beyond a certain point. And I'll describe that point. It's very, very critical, very important for 14,000 years ago, geography, when we get to the west and north direction. Yes.
Another question by Lata ji. She says, but in Valmiki Ramayana, they say Sri Ram did puja on the shore to get the solution to cross the ocean. When you were talking about Sri Lanka was joined here.
Correct. Okay. So yes, the shore of India goes from all the way, say, think of a Gujarat, or that time, even it will include Karachi and even the parts of Iran, by the way. Not many people realize that. Okay. In fact, if you go in the north, and we will talk when we get to the north direction, the area of Turkmenistan and the western part of China, currently western part of China, and those areas, parts of Kazakhstan and whatnot, southern parts of Kazakhstan, that is Uttara Madra, Uttara Kuru. Even you will find the references east of Caspian Sea. You will find the references even in the Greek records going back 2,000 years, referring to Uttara Kuru. That's what they will call, Ptolemy will call that by that name. Similarly, India's ocean shore I mean, it's all the way from that Iran, you can, if you want to call it, all the way through Karachi, all the way Gujarat, comes down, goes all the way to Bay of Bengal. And actually, by that time, all the way to Myanmar and Thailand. So yes, Rama performed some kind of a puja. Now, for that, Lataji, I would encourage you, I will insist that you go and read Valmiki Ramayana. Okay, exactly what was done. Because after Valmiki Ramayana, there are many Ramayana. I mean, we talk about 1,000 Ramayanas and 300 Ramayanas. Many Ramayanas, these were written from a different perspective. Sometimes the emphasis was on a bhakti. Sometimes the emphasis was on a adbhut. There is something called Adbhuta Ramayana. There is a Ananda Ramayana, just to receive a joy. Then there is a Tulsi Ramayana. So they have a slightly different purpose. We should not use references from those Ramayana for historical purposes, for geography purposes. That is the answer.
I'll come to a question by Bipin Kumar Bhatt. He says, what could have been the age for which people lived? Since Sugriv covered the world many times, and how much time would it have taken him to cover the world? Okay.
So what was the first part of the question?
How long did people live? What was their age?
Okay. In the case of Ramayana, we don't know exact numbers. In fact, some of the numbers that come, they are so astronomical that either only you can believe them on the strength of a dogma, okay, that not to question anything that is written in Ramayana, or you can use the darshana, pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda, or as Krishna says in Bhagavad Puran, Shruti, Pratyaksham, Aitiyam, Anumanam, Chatushtayam. You have to do the quadrangulation of 4, not just read one statement and believe it. But I'll tell you what the astronomical statements are for the age in Ramayana. They absolutely don't make sense. Our great acharyas have made wonderful commentary how to interpret those. For example, Rama is described as ruling for 10,000 years or 11,000 years. Okay, or Dashrath is described as 60,000 years old. Okay, these could be Pathabhed, these could be interpolations, like somebody from Adbhuta Ramayana took something to Valmiki Ramayana and mixed it up. That's all possible. No, based on the genetic evidence, the anthropology evidence, we know that their age, I mean their longevity was similar to ours. Possibly could be longer. In case of Rama, it doesn't appear to be that long. Actually, Rama was around 32 years old when he killed Ravana. And then if you take 10,000 years, that's a different story. Okay, if you want to go with that, and just because it's written in Ramayana, hey, feel free to go there. But that's not how I do research. And that's not how acharyas do research, by the way. But if there is one statement, it says, Ahoratra Samvatsara. In a certain context, a year is to be understood as a day. And some people, like Dr. Vartak has performed calculation. He has taken that 11,000 years divided by, taken as a day. It comes to 31 years or 30 years. That means Ram would have lived for around 60 years. Actually, not very long life. Quickly, if you come to Mahabharata times, you find like Bhishma was there for 140 plus years. Bhishma lived for 140 years. And Mahabharata has references which say, where the description comes as a typical lifespan as 120 years. And the context in which it comes, that 120 years is given as a conservative number. So the point I'm saying is they would, or it appears they lived for a much longer time in comparison to us, but we are not talking of thousands and thousands of years. And so that's first question. The second one is, how did they find time? Well, I don't know the answer, but based on the narrations, we know that they did find a time to go around these places multiple times.
Somebody called Resham Lal asked, did they celebrate Diwali during the times of Mahabharata?
Okay, Mahabharata. Now, we are not talking Mahabharata today, are we? Okay, so does he want to reframe his question?
It's fine. It is fine if, because even I found it a little out of context.
Yeah, but I will take this opportunity, Aparna ji, to mention something else. There was one event, okay? So because that was a side subject, like why we celebrate. It's very important we as a civilization understand that a traditional celebration, say like a Vijayadashmi, Dashahara, and we assign so many things to that particular day. Like that is the day Ram killed Ravana. Okay, and so many other things. Do you know why they did that? Now, this is my conjecture. I'm saying our civilization is so deep, antiquity, and there are so many events that has happened. And if we start celebrating and start taking holidays for each of those celebration, then we would never work. Okay, so our smart acharyas, what they did is they took these all celebrations and many times they coupled it together. Even in corporate, I mean, I had a corporate group of 30 people one time, and you know what we used to do? Like celebrating their birthdays, you know, finding that specific day and remembering that is difficult. I say, okay, we will do it like 3 times a year. Okay, whoever is closer to that day, we will bring those many cakes and clapping and candle, whatever, and just done. Okay, something that very practical approach that they have used. But the reason I want to use this question, although I don't want to go into whether Diwali was celebrated, but the question is coming from that, you know, which is to say, first thing, Diwali was, we celebrate what? Diwali as Rama's arriving in Ayodhya. Again, that is not true historically. Rama arrived in Ayodhya on Vaishakh Shukla Shashti. Okay, the nakshatra was a Pushya. Okay, it's a very, please read my book, 12,209 BC or the historic Rama. Okay, but again, we are combining all these events with our existing festivals. But something else I want to make, this is something very fascinating. Now, those people who I can see on the screen, if you raise a hand, you know, like how many of you know the first day of the year celebrated called either Ugadi, that's kind of Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, or Maharashtra called Gudi Padwa. Okay, now you will find the evidence of this tradition, not by that name, in Valmiki Ramayana. And you know, it was called Indradhwaja festival. Multiple, up to six references come to that. And do you know when the Indradhwaj festival was done? In Ramayana times, it was done during the month of Ashwin. Again, you want to know why? Because that time the month of Ashwin came during the spring season, the Vasanta Rutu. You come to Mahabharata times, you see the same festival. Okay, it has got similar name, and you see the descriptions even in the Mahabharata times. So some of our traditions that we celebrate, we may not know the whole history. They are that old. Okay, so but I think whether, you know, I didn't want to directly answer that question, but actually I did answer the question. So we must separate or understand the difference between a traditional celebration of a certain event and its actual historical date. They may not coincide. Many times, actually, they will not coincide. And if you blindly follow the traditional claims, traditional celebration dates, and try to match with the historical accuracy, you will have contradiction that you will not able to resolve. And I have many examples, but I'll not go there today.